Well, good morning and welcome to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Akam, and we are broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Market Street in Corning. Thank you so much for joining us. Also joining us this morning, first in the 6 o'clock hour, we'll be talking with Debbie Shannon. She has a new thriller out called The Rainy Night Stalker. She has a book signing coming up on Thursday, so we'll be talking with her in the 6 o'clock hour. And then in the 7 o'clock hour, the moment we've all been waiting for, talking with Steuben County Sheriff Jim Allard, fan favorite to the program, but also finally the update we've been waiting for. We broke the news last week that he was vindicated on all the court cases, if you will, how do you want to word it? The battle, I guess, the battle against Steuben County. We're going to talk about that with the sheriff in the next hour. Breaking news last night, though. We want to start with this coming in from over the night. Trump is now considering, according to the Wall Street Journal, replacing Pete Hegseth with Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. Now, again, it's according to the Wall Street Journal, and it's, quote, people familiar with the discussions. So take that with a grain of salt. Also, there's the thought that if you take DeSantis away, that is a good Republican governor for Florida. You know, there's definitely some implications there, but the move comes as Hegseth has been dealing with some controversy, as you know. Lindsey Graham, which isn't necessarily a surprise, but Lindsey Graham turning on Hegseth, calling the reports coming out disturbing. I think some of these articles are very disturbing, Lindsey Graham said. He, meaning Hegseth, obviously has a chance to defend himself here, but some of this stuff, it's going to be difficult. He said, I like Pete, then argued, what we want to do is make sure that we have good order and discipline. Leadership comes at the top, and I want to make sure that every young woman who joins the military feels respected. Now, Piers Morgan slammed the relentless onslaught. I'm going to talk about that in a second. But the defense secretary post requires Senate confirmation, and Hegseth faces an increasingly uphill battle to win over GOP members with concerns about his past. As many as 6 Senate Republicans have expressed reservations about confirming Hegseth for the top Pentagon role. That's according to NBC News. DeSantis, who is a former Navy judge advocate general, was on a short list of potential defense secretary candidates presented to Trump by the transition team before he went with Hegseth, according to the Wall Street Journal. The list has recently been dusted off and presented to Trump again as allegations about Hegseth, which some senators have described as disturbing, as Lindsey Graham said, continue to surface. Sources that spoke to the Journal cautioned that Trump could settle on a different replacement for Hegseth should his nomination fail. The idea of being nominated as defense secretary, however, has been presented to DeSantis in recent days. Interesting. Now, like Hegseth and Trump, DeSantis has spoke out and been a vocal critic of the woke policies that the Pentagon has recently, not even really recently, had been pushing the woke policies. During his presidential primary campaign, DeSantis proposed eliminating Pentagon diversity initiatives and slashing military programs focused on climate change. So that is the breaking news this morning. Again, coming from, quote, people familiar with the discussions. So, take it with a grain of salt, but Trump considering replacing Pete Hegseth with Ron DeSantis. I know we've had, as the defense secretary, I know we've had a lot of people, not a lot of people, but quite a few people comment on this program that they believe that Hegseth's days were numbered. Disappointing, and it's also disappointing, as Piers Morgan said, the relentless onslaught against Pete Hegseth, getting to the point, as Piers Morgan said, it is pathetic. Quote, the relentless onslaught against Pete Hegseth is getting pathetic. Done Fox and Friends many times with him and never known Pete to be anything but utterly professional on camera and a nice, respectful guy off of it. They would be described as hit pieces against Hegseth, but as I think many people have been saying, during this program that you can almost read the writing on the wall, unfortunately, and the media has a lot of control over this, as they have with others, Matt Gaetz, but they're doing it with other picks by the Trump transition team for Trump's cabinet. They have been going full tilt to try to demean nearly every pick, except, it seems, Marco Rubio. They'll continue to say loyalists to all of them, but then they'll say controversial pick. That's when you know they've got the long knives out for his pick. So I just want to start the program off with that and get your take on it, get your thoughts on Pete Hegseth, the potential of being out for that pick. Interesting. I know they said so far the biggest, Tulsi Gabbard's a controversial one to them. Pete Hegseth, of course, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. It's going to be very interesting, the confirmation process. We'll put it that way. Also, Trump's DEA pick, Drug Enforcement Agency, who he picked to lead the DEA, announced Tuesday that he will not take the job following quite a backlash. But the backlash in this instance was from conservatives. Hillsborough County Sheriff Chad Chronister, described by some conservatives as a COVID tyrant, bowed out just 3 days after being selected by Trump to lead the nation's primary agency for combating illegal drugs. He said in a statement to have been nominated by President-elect Donald Trump to serve as administrator of the Drug Enforcement Administration is the honor of a lifetime. Over the past several days, as the gravity of this very important responsibility set in, I've concluded that I must respectfully withdraw from consideration. There is more work to be done for the citizens of Hillsborough County and a lot of initiatives I am committed to fulfilling. I sincerely appreciate the nomination, outpouring of support by the American people, and look forward to continuing my service as sheriff of Hillsborough County. Now, his record came under scrutiny because at the height of COVID-19, he ordered the arrest of Ronald Howard Brown, the pastor of the River at Tampa Bay Church, for allegedly flouting COVID-19 lockdown orders by holding services at the church. Howard Brown, quote, intentionally and repeatedly disregarded state and local public health orders, which put his congregation and our community in danger, he tweeted at the time. The pastor was charged with unlawful assembly and violation of public health emergency rules. Both charges, second-degree misdemeanors, were later dropped. Representative Thomas Massey and Chip Roy both slammed Chronister's nomination, saying, I'm going to call him like I see him. Trump's nominee for head of DEA should be disqualified for ordering the arrest of a pastor who defied COVID lockdowns. Roy said, that was Massey. Roy saying, we don't need authoritarians who refuse to use discretion and protect the Constitution, no matter which party is in power. Conservative commentator Liz Wheeler argued that Chronister abused his authority by arresting Howard Brown and is unfit to head the DEA. So you could see where the onslaught came in this scenario from conservatives. So those are just a couple quick updates on some of Trump's nominees. We may get to others. Pete Hegseth, we almost saw that from the beginning because there was a lot. First of all, anytime you have someone that works for Fox News being selected, you are going to instantly see the label of, well, what's the word I want to use? They use that he is controversial, but they'll go further and say that they push conspiracy theories. But controversial, you'll instantly label that if Donald Trump selects you, number one. Number two, if you do come from Fox News. Another update, Democrat challenger. Wow, we're getting a lot of updates here in the first segment of the program. Breaking news from all across the board. Democrat, this actually came in even later. This was breaking from late last night or early morning, however you want to look at it. But Democrat Adam Gray has won California's 13th congressional district race, defeating incumbent Republican Representative John Duarte, according to the Associated Press. California's 13th congressional district was the last seat to be called, with the district being one of the most competitive races in the Golden State. Now Republicans maintain the majority with 220, with Democrats trailing at 216. And it's interesting because when you look at some of the people that Trump selected who were in Congress for a short period of time before special elections could be called, it is going to be, I don't even know if it's a majority at that point. It's very interesting. Gray, a former state legislator who represented California's 21st Assembly District from 2012 to 2022, is considered a centrist Democrat who focused on key concerns for farmers in the Central Valley like water shortages. So flipping that seat, very interesting. The delay in that, I mean, you're looking at, I think it had to be certified by the 5th tomorrow, but you're looking at nearly, well, a day short of a month to get those votes tallied. So you have a very, very close race there, and now the majority for Republicans slims, but still, again, a clear mandate with the Republicans controlling the House and the Senate, and of course, the White House. And the White House through the Electoral College vote, but also through the popular vote, which does not play into that factor. That's not how you run the game, but it's still nice to have that mandate. Okay, we do have some updates in a way on Hunter Biden's pardon. More of it is about the criticism from both sides. Some Democrats lashing out what this makes them look like, kind of the lying aspect to it, the stereotypical, if you will, politician. Say over and over, you'll do one thing and then do another. They hate the optics of that. Also the fact of how Biden worded the statement of why he was doing it, suggesting that the Department of Justice was politicized, which is something Trump has been saying for quite some time. The ironic thing is, of course, it's Biden's Department of Justice, so that gets a little confusing. Now you have people jumping on the bandwagon like Mayor Adams and former Governor Andrew Cuomo, who is in the news quite a bit today, and we'll talk about that. But him tying himself into Adams and Trump, saying yes, the justice has been politicized. So we'll talk about that. Pardon me, excuse me, frog in my throat. But when we come back, we do have an update on Andrew Cuomo, which is going to lead into some other local and statewide issues. So stay with us. We're just getting warmed up. I see some waves and some comments coming in. We'll get to those when we come back. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. Thank you again to Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact Boss Security for all your business and home security needs. Welcome back as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio here on Market Street in Corning. I've got to mention this just quickly. So this is a little wonky, but very important to know at a time when we see the mass exodus from New York, and we're just talking about Cuomo. Speaking of Cuomo, we did have a comment from a viewer. Morning, Frank. Well, good morning. Just curious, can Cuomo be sued for the nursing home deaths he was responsible for? Well, he was, and it was dismissed back in September. I don't know if more can be done, especially now with this report coming from Congress. That would be a great question. I'm sure there's people looking into it, and there could already be some type of case in the works. But there was one that was dismissed by a judge back in September. But speaking of New York, lawmakers and Governor Hochul commissioned the Rockefeller Institute of Government, a research shop within the state university system, to have a look at how they dispense money for schools. Now, these wonks at the Rockefeller Institute issued their 314-page finding, and probably hasn't got a lot of attention. You may not have heard about it, especially anything that's 314 pages. But true to their penchant for following data wherever they lead, they bravely exposed the rotten underbelly of a public education system lawmakers at best have been afraid to confront, and at worst have purposefully concealed to benefit the teachers union. Listen to this. Quote, New York stands out as a disproportionately high spending state, end quote. Now, that's not a footnote. That is actually chapter 1 of the report. Between 2012 and 2022, New York's per student spending rocketed from less than $20,000 to nearly $30,000, almost twice as quickly as inflation. And every year, New York spent more than any other state, and by 2022 was spending 36% more than neighboring Massachusetts and close to double the national average. Now, in this case, it's important to know every school district in New York, even the ones that are frugal and regions with lower costs of living, not New York City, our type of area, spend more than the national median. Wow. Most districts fall into the top quintile of spending. Meanwhile, students in California or Texas are about twice as likely to be counted as English language learners as ones in New York. But it's just interesting to look at this number and the spending. And as you see your bills, you may understand why people are leaving the state in droves. So I wanted to pass that along to you just quickly, because I don't imagine, unless you're really wonky, that you're reading that report. But outrageous spending. Hey, speaking of outrageous spending, boy, we are good on segues this morning. Harris and Walz, their campaign, quietly releases a post-election survey. And while doing so, hits up supporters for more cash. Yes, we've talked over and over again about the spending of $1.5 billion, and yet still, in 107 days, mind you, and yet still $20 million in debt. We've talked about some of that wasteful spending, and ironically, we talk about the Harris-Walz campaign like we're talking about the federal government and the wasteful spending. The Harris-Walz campaign has sent out a clueless post-election survey asking supporters which of their rejected policies and tactics they should continue peddling, quote, to help elect Democrats up and down the ballot in 2025 and beyond. The campaign, which chewed through an astonishing $1.5 billion and wound up over $20 million in debt in just 15 weeks, even has the gall to conclude the quiz by passing the hat around for more cash. Harris Fight Fund is the intended beneficiary of the sly fundraising effort, which recently came under fire for shamelessly attempting to raise money to pay off election-related expenses, including some vendors it has stiffed for payments. Questions on the survey take jabs at President-elect Donald Trump's agenda, which voters resoundingly supported in the voting booth less than a month ago, delivering the first popular vote victory claimed by a GOP candidate in a generation. Quote, which of President Trump's priorities do you find most troubling? The survey begins, asking respondents to choose among options like enacting mass deportation, slashing taxes for the ultra-wealthy, gutting abortion access, and attacking the fundamental rights of LGBTQ plus Americans. It goes on to ask how the Democrat Party can best hamper Trump's agenda, meekly acknowledging that they will be in the minority once the next Congress begins in January, and including options like blocking appointment of right-wing judges and protecting federal agencies. Apparently a reference to the Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE, set up with Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy. Just wanted to pass that along to you quickly. All right, when we come back, we are going to hear from Debbie Shannon. She has a new book out called The Rainy Night Stalker, and she has a book signing coming up on Thursday. You're going to hear all about it when we come back, and then we'll talk a little bit about pardons. And as I mentioned in the 7 o'clock hour, we are going to be talking with Steuben County Sheriff Jim Allard, which we really look forward to. It's not too late to get your questions in for the sheriff. I have collected some that we've already received. I think we're all on pretty much the same page what the first question will be. But if not, please feel free to send in those questions. Let's take that break. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Hakem. We're broadcasting from the Hesselson studio here on Marcus Street in Corning, and this is the Steuben Senior Services Fund section of our show. That's a mouthful. And we'd like to welcome to the program Debbie Shannon. Thanks so much for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.
You must be excited because your new thriller, The Rainy Night Stalker, is out.
Yes.
So tell us about it, because you have a book signing coming up at the Christ Episcopal Church. That's right here in Corning, of course, at 7 p.m. is that's the kickoff, and then 7:30 you start reading.
And then I'll at 7:30 I'll read a little bit.
And that's this Thursday. So tell us about the new book, The Rainy Night Stalker.
The new book. This is my first thriller.
Wow.
I have 3 other books published. One is historical fiction, and the other 2 are narrative nonfiction. So it's sort of history based. This one came to me in a dream.
Oh.
My first thriller.
Well, there you go.
Well, without giving too much away, because
like the twists and turns you're saying came up to you?
No. Okay, so I had this dream where a forensic photographer, a woman, was walking through a field, and she comes upon a body.
Okay.
The victim, and she's taking her pictures. I knew nothing about forensic photography or whatever. So she's taking a picture, and she crouches down next to the face of the dead woman, who's looking up into the sky, and her mouth is open, dead. Yeah. And all of a sudden she turns and looks at this forensic photographer, and in her camera display, she sees the victim running through the woods, running away from her stalker, and you hear the voice, "I've got you now," and then
creepy.
the dead body like goes back, and I wake up and I'm like, "What just happened?" So I like ran. It was 3 a.m. I'm like, "Where's my pen?" Like I've got to write this down. And the whole day, it was just so bizarre and vivid, and I just thought the whole day going like Wegmans or whatever. I'm like, who is this person?
Sure.
What is this? And the book, that scene is the end of chapter 1.
Okay.
And so basically, the if you had a movie, which I've written the screenplay, so the log line would be the forensic photographer is psychic and communicates with the dead to solve their murders.
Okay. Very
So
interesting.
that's, there's this psychic element. So it's been told it's medium meets Silence of the Lambs.
Oh, wow. Okay, that's a connection. That's
Because there's a serial killer,
right, Right. So do you mentioned it came to you in a dream. Do you take things from real life in the book?
All the time.
Yeah.
All the time. Well, this one, this is...
Like you said, you were walking around Wegmans thinking of characters. Like
I do.
You just see somebody and go, I know that person.
If I hear a conversation or I'll see somebody's shoes.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, who these beat up boots or whatever. Who's this guy? Or, whatever. I have to say, I'll go to Dunkin' Donuts and I'll get like a breakfast sandwich and a coffee or whatever. And I'm a big cemetery sitter.
Okay.
And I get the best like names and you think about like, who is this person? Who would that be? And and my family has been famous for knowing that if they say anything, it might turn up into a book. And recently, I was at a family reunion or something, a family get together, and someone said something about like Uncle John. I'm like, and they're like, no.
Writing down your notebook.
Do not use that.
That's funny. So people are actually nervous to be in your book. That's funny.
Well,
not everybody, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is it different? Is it real difficult to write different genres? Because these are quite different that you've been doing.
No, some people are pigeonholed. I get pigeonholed may not be the right word. Their strengths are a particular genre.
Gotcha.
I love storytelling, and I just think that everyone has a story to tell, and it kind of unfolds the way it's supposed to. I'm a big history buff, so if I meet someone like that, I hear they were in the Korean War or whatever, I'll ask questions. And my second book was about a woman who, at that time, she was my best friend. She was 100 years old.
Oh, wow.
And she and I would go to brunch every Sunday. And one day she told me that she met W.H. Auden, the famous poet. And she said that was the most important thing that ever happened to me. And I'm like, hang on, you're 100.
Yeah,
and
there's got to be something else.
That one afternoon was a watershed moment in my life.
Yeah.
I was going this way and it went, and so I said, okay, well, there's a story here. Can I write it? And it turned out to be, my...
Oh, that's amazing.
Up until this is selling very, very well, but up until then, that was the bestseller.
How long is, and we're talking about the Rainy Night Stalker.
Yeah.
How long has it been out?
3 weeks.
Oh, okay. So not very long.
Yeah, a month maybe.
Oh, that's great. How long does it take for you to write a book, and is each genre, for lack of a better word, the same amount, give or take? Or
that's a good question. I would say a year or less.
Okay.
So I have maybe 7 outlines for new books.
Oh, wow.
And I have the sequel to this. I have a couple others. There's one psychological thriller that I wrote and is being reviewed by literary agents right now. But I have these outlines for these ideas, and I think of them as like horses in a race, right? Yeah. And they're kind of jockeying for position. And then one will kind of
get your
go
attention.
out and break away from the pack. And when that happens, I know that's the book I have to work on.
Interesting.
Yeah, so I know, okay, everybody else goes, and then that's the one I'm going to work on. Yeah.
Do you have a strict regimen? I have to write so many pages a day, or is it a little more laid back?
Not pages, but I do write every day.
Okay.
And so I know it's just one of those things where people say you have to write every day. Do I write every single day? No. Sometimes I take a break, but I usually write from about 9 to noon, take a lunch break, and maybe finish up around 2.
Okay.
So,
but what's also interesting, going back to your point about, always looking for stories and like that, you're kind of writing even when you're not writing, or at least coming up with ideas, right?
Absolutely.
Do you find that the story, especially one like this, which is such an amazing story coming from a dream, do you find it almost takes over your life in your mind?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, does it? Yeah.
It does.
Yeah.
It does. Somebody will be talking to me and I'm thinking of dialogue.
Yeah.
Like something else is happening. I'm sorry, but that
Yeah,
does
just so people
happen,
know,
where
if
I'm
your
just-
eyes glaze over.
If my eyes glaze over, I'm not.
It's not the
yeah.
topic. It's not the topic.
It's not you, it's me.
That's really interesting, though, because I think about it, and we have a mutual friend Tony Pucci, who I've had on the show numerous times, every time he writes a book. And I just find the whole process interesting, because it must be like, people say with an album, if they come out with an album, it's their baby, right? Or their song that they write, it's a baby.
Yeah.
It's got to be the same type of thing with a book.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Do you
I
ever-
don't have kids, so these are my babies.
So these are your babies, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so do you find that? Now, I'm not saying take personal, but if someone goes, "Oh boy, I like this one more than this one," you're like, "Wait a minute, they're
Not at
all equal to me." Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
no. I've written screenplays, and I've written books.
Right.
And it's just something that you create, like with every art.
Sure.
Not everyone's going to like your music. Not everyone's going to like your sculptor.
Your
And you'll be
painting.
like, what the heck is that going on? And others, it really, really speaks to them. You have to almost let it go,
Yeah.
because
That makes sense.
you put you open your veins and you bleed onto the
Yeah, right,
page,
right.
basically,
Yeah,
right?
like a Rolling Stones song.
And it's very, very personal. And it's one of those things. I think maybe acting. I was an actor for a very, very long time, for at least 20 years.
So that makes
So
sense.
you get hardened to the fact that it's not you.
Right.
It's you have to
You have
release
to let it go.
Yeah, let it go.
Yeah. We're talking about The Rainy Night Stalker, out now. The book signing is at the Christ Episcopal Church, 33 East 1st Street in Corning. It begins at 7, reading at 7:30, and that is on Thursday. When it says reading at 7:30, you don't read the whole book.
No,
What
no,
your
no,
favorite passages, or how do you do that without giving away the top or giving away the
Well,
story?
what I'm going to do, because I told you about the dream,
Yeah,
I'll
yeah.
tell
That's-
about the inspiration, and I'll take
okay.
that little section of chapter 1 is
Yeah.
what I'm going to read.
Oh, okay.
Just to kind of give them a taste of my writing style, the scene, and a little cliffhanger.
Yeah. And I've never been to a book signing, so what's it like? You show up, you kind of check in, and then you sit down and take it all in?
Yeah.
And then hopefully buy a book and get it signed. I'm assuming, hence the name, right? A book signing.
Exactly, yeah.
Now, you can obviously get the book the night of the book signing.
Yes.
But are there other places that you can purchase it?
You can purchase it on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. I know the ebook is available on BookBub and a bunch of different places.
Sure.
Yeah.
And it's a great Christmas gift. Perfect timing, right? Is that why
Yes.
everybody always has a book come out right around this time?
Yeah.
Is there a place that, and you had mentioned past books, people can purchase those, I'm assuming, the
Yes.
same kind of locations?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, you look the Rainy Night Stalker up, let's say, for example, on Amazon.
Okay.
And then there's a highlighted, my name is highlighted. And you
Okay.
click on my name and it'll come up with my author page with all of my books. But yeah.
And you said you're working on some books coming
I'm
up
working
soon?
on, yes, I'm working on the sequel to this, and I also have a finished book called A Fatal Mistake, which is a psychological thriller. Very Patricia Highsmith, if you know that author who did The Talented Mr. Ripley.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So it's a mashup of that and A Good Marriage
Okay.
by Stephen King.
Okay.
So
Oh, wow.
it's about a guy and a marriage gone wrong.
Yeah.
And the guy's the one that's gaslit. So
Oh, interesting.
a lot of times the women
Yeah,
or
yeah, of
the
course, yeah.
husband is the one or the partner is the one that's gaslighting. I switched it.
And well, do us a favor. Now, when that's out, would you come back on the show?
Absolutely.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
And so where can people find out more before they go to the book signing? Christ Episcopal Church, Thursday at 7 p.m. Where can they find out more?
You can find out at debbieshannon.com. That's my website. You'll have my book page right there. It'll take you right to Amazon. And if you have any questions, you can contact me on my website.
And great. But make sure to go to book signing, right? We
Yes.
want you at the book signing. Well, thanks so much for being on the show.
Thank you so much, Frank.
Of course. Stay with us. We'll be right back. The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact Boss Security for all your business and home security needs. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking as we broadcast live from the Hesselson's studio here on Marcus Street in Corning. I appreciate Debbie Shannon for being on the program this morning. We've got the Sheriff Jim Allard, coming up in the next hour. Right now we're going to talk a little bit about the pardon, but I've got a comment from a viewer. If we can forgive Hunter Biden for his past transgressions, why can't we forgive Pete Hegseth? That is, if indeed there are past transgressions. This is shaping up to be another swamp hit job. I've long since been uninterested in anything that Lindsey Graham finds disturbing. I understand that comment right there at the end. Yeah, those transgressions are not even comparable, but I understand your very important point there. Now, let's talk about the pardon. First of all, Trump has made a deal with the DOJ on background checks for incoming administration officials. This is important to note before we talk about some of the issues with the DOJ currently. The transition team has reached an agreement with the Justice Department on Tuesday that will allow the FBI to conduct background checks on administration nominees and appointees. Quote, the agreement with the Department of Justice will ensure President Trump and his team are ready on day one to begin enacting the America First agenda that an overwhelming majority of our nation supported on Election Day. That's what incoming White House Chief of Staff Susie Wiles said in a statement. So let's tie that in. The DOJ apparently was caught off guard by Biden's blanket pardon for Hunter. This is interesting. The sweeping nature of Biden's maneuver to pardon his son was so jarring that it reportedly caught the Justice Department's Office of the Pardon Attorney off guard. Now, we know days after that powwow in Nantucket, Biden publicly announced that he was breaking his and the White House's longstanding public pledge and giving his son a blanket pardon for any offense committed or possibly committed, unbelievable, between January 1st, 2014 and December 1st, 2024. Typically, presidents consult with the Office of the Pardon Attorney when making decisions, but the office was surprised by his move. That's according to one source speaking with Politico. So they were not aware of it. And that, talk about being caught off guard, and we'll mention that in a second, because the reporter, or CNN's Caitlin Collins, talked about the kind of bombshell nature of this yesterday. But standard practice for the Office of Pardon Attorney generally recommends complete pardons for individuals who already completed their sentences. Hunter Biden wasn't set to face sentencing until next week. Therefore, the Office of the Pardon Attorney likely would not have recommended such action for the president's scandal-scarred son, is what the New York Times is now reporting. Moreover, the lame duck president went a step further and departed from typical norms by issuing a full and unconditional pardon, broader than any done in modern history, except for former President Gerald Ford's controversial clemency for his predecessor Richard Nixon. But if you even look at it, this even went further when you talk about the time frame. Also, this is the closest relative to have ever been pardoned. You did have Bill Clinton. He pardoned, of course, his half-brother. But critics within the Democrat Party and progressive circles have fretted that Biden has given President-elect Donald Trump a fresh excuse and precedent to issue similar broad pardons. Because as so many have said, this is such a broad pardon that is setting a very troubling precedent. Representative Glenn Ivey, Democrat from Maryland, said, I know that there was a real strong sentiment in, wanting to protect Hunter Biden from unfair prosecution. But this is going to be used against us when we're fighting the misuses that are coming from the Trump administration. Of course, assuming that there'll be this misuse from the Trump administration. Still, presidents have long enjoyed sweeping discretion under the Constitution to grant clemency, with the major limitation restricting them from committing a crime such as bribery when issuing a pardon. So there is kind of the update that the DOJ caught off guard by this, which is very interesting, but not the only ones caught off guard. Caitlin Collins said that it left Democrats in the blast radius of what was a political time bomb. CNN anchor Caitlin Collins, many in the past critical of perhaps some of her interviews with Republicans, and specifically President-elect Trump, called President Joe Biden's pardon of his son, Hunter Biden, a political time bomb that left Democrats in the blast radius, and point out his hypocrisy after years of claiming he would respect the Justice Department's rulings. And I know some of the criticisms coming from the fact of what he said. I think Stephen A. Smith had, and I'm going to paraphrase here, but I thought he had a really interesting opinion on it, which is if he would have just come out and said, it's my son. I'm doing it. I know I said I wasn't, but it's my son. Left it at that. But when he started getting into the political nature of the Department of Justice and how there was a political weapon essentially used against his son, that created even more problems. And now, as I had mentioned, people like former governor, disgraced Governor Andrew Cuomo, Mayor Adams, pointing to what was said and saying, hey, yeah, we're all in the same boat. Trump was, it was politicized with him, Mayor Adams, Cuomo, that's what Cuomo's saying. So with 50, this is what Caitlin Collins said. With 50 days left in his presidency, Joe Biden just set off a political time bomb before leaving for Africa and leaving his party behind to deal with the blast radius. Collins pointed out how Biden went back on his word since he repeatedly said he would not pardon Hunter, and we know that. He had said numerous times as of recently. The statement at times, meaning the statement that was released when he announced that he was pardoning his son, sounded like something Trump himself could have posted on Truth Social. In another clip, they talked about the interview with David Muir, where Biden vowed to abide by the jury's decision and had ruled out a pardon. Collins said, rarely, if ever, have we heard from both Biden and Trump on the same page about anything. But now it's in print, their mutual anger at the Justice Department. And the irony there, of course, is that it is Joe Biden's Justice Department. One that actually tried everything they could, and they must feel pretty slighted on this. One that tried to do everything they could to save Hunter from these kind of troubles. And that plea deal, which the plea deal is not that far off from this blanket pardon that Biden gave his son, and very similar. This long time frame where he was not going to be in any kind of trouble for anything that came out, that was already come out, and that the judge rightfully and strong-willed said, would anybody else get a plea like this? And as we know, as history now proves, his lawyers got, as they would say, a little too big for their britches, and got kind of cocky. And of course, that plea deal was taken away. Now, the federal judge accuses President Biden of attempting to rewrite history in this pardon. The federal judge overseeing Hunter Biden's tax case issued a sharp rebuke of President Biden's claim that his son was unfairly treated, as well as the president's delivery method following the president's last-minute pardon. The Constitution, he says, provides the president with broad authority to grant reprieves and pardons for offenses against the United States. But nowhere does the Constitution give the president the authority to rewrite history. Rather than providing a true and correct copy of the pardon with a notice, Mr. Biden provided a hyperlink to a White House press release representing a statement by the president regarding the pardon and purported text of the pardon. In short, a press release is not a pardon. The president asserts that. So that's a quick update, but I realize I'm running late. Stay with us. Keep those comments coming in. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. We are back broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Marcus Street in Corning. As I mentioned, the next hour we'll be talking with Steuben County Sheriff Jim Allard. Also, I do appreciate earlier having Debbie Shannon on talking about her new book, The Rainy Night Stalker. On tomorrow's program, we've got a busy lineup. Former Congressman and current Assemblyman-elect Joe Sempolinski will be joining us. So make sure you get your questions in for that interview as well. We have not talked to him since the election, so we really look forward to catching up, not just because he won his race for assembly, but also talking to him as in his capacity as Steuben County Republican Committee Chairman, talking about Donald Trump's win in the House and the Senate for Republicans. So we'll be talking to him. And then on Friday, we've got another busy show. We'll be playing an interview with Dr. Stephen Coleman. Now, Dr. Coleman has an upcoming event, Unity in the Community, a rally to celebrate democracy in America in the Twin Tiers at Wisner Park this Saturday from 1 to 2. It's sponsored by Dr. Coleman, pardon me, and president of the NAACP, Georgia Verdier, friend of Frankly Speaking. We've had her on the program numerous times, and that is coming up on Saturday. So he'll be joining us on Friday to talk about the event. And also on Friday, it's Fridays with Phil. Assemblyman Phil Palmisano will be joining us on the program. All right, hour number 1 is in the books. We got another hour on the way with Steuben County Sheriff Jim Allard. We'll talk a little bit more, if time allows, a little bit more about the Hunter Biden pardon. We do have some other issues, but that looks more and more unlikely that we'll be able to get to. But the breaking news, the thing that we've been talking about the most, that it looks as if Pete Hegseth may be out. That sources are saying, so you've always got to be careful with this. Sources are saying that there's a potential for Governor DeSantis taking his place in the role in the Pentagon. Nothing official yet. We'll keep an eye on that, but that is kind of the breaking news over coming out over last night. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. But we are out of time for hour number one. Stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. I'm your host, Frank Akam. Thank you for joining us this morning on the program. We've been talking about the Hunter Biden pardon throughout the morning. Chuck Schumer dodged the question multiple times. We know many are trying to avoid this, as we noted earlier, the kind of the political bombshell that this was. He dodged multiple questions on President Joe Biden in issuing his son a pardon, saying on numerous occasions, "I've got nothing for you on that." And that was to 4 different questions about the pardon itself. Now, this is interesting because we know Chuck Schumer loves it. This is almost a cliche joke at this point that you don't ever get in front of or in the middle of the Chuck Schumer and a microphone. So to not have a statement on that. Now, it's a stark contrast from several Democrat senators who've condemned the president's decision to pardon a member of his family, and we've been talking about that. But on the other side of that coin, Jeffries, House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, is calling on President Biden to issue more pardons before he leaves office. Quote, during his final weeks in office, President Biden should exercise the high level of compassion he has consistently demonstrated throughout his life, including towards his son, and pardon on a case-by-case basis the working-class Americans in the federal prison system whose lives have been ruined by unjustly aggressive prosecutions for nonviolent offenses. This moment calls for liberty and justice for all. That's Hakeem Jeffries, who was interesting after the election, kind of skirted any responsibility for the Democrat losses. And then one day everybody kind of looked around and said, wait, why haven't we been critical of him, who really took the reins in many ways? So former Governor Cuomo, I've been mentioning this throughout the morning, he knocked Biden for the pardon. Former New York governor, boy, he's all over the news. You could tell he's getting ready to make that announcement for mayor or for something, but most are speculating that it'll be for New York City mayor. Former New York Governor Andrew Cuomo was one of the latest liberals to call out President Biden for going back on his word and pardoning his son. Quote, it makes me sad. I understand the semantic difference they're trying to make. He didn't lie. He changed his mind. Yeah, I think it's sad. It's hypocritical. He said he wasn't going to do it, and he did. And that's what Whoopi Goldberg, and we talked about it yesterday, twisting kind of herself up into a pretzel to come up with a way to defend this, saying it wasn't a lie. He just changed his mind because he had to, because Trump is going to do bad things, and Trump has done bad things in her mind. This is Whoopi Goldberg. So he just said, why not? I'm going to do it now. So all those other times, and let's be honest with ourselves. We've said it on this program, and I'm not the only one. We said months ago that no matter, well, especially if Trump were to win the election, we said at the time, but even if that weren't the case, he is going to end up pardoning his son. I think most people accepted it. That's why it was so odd how many times they continued to deny it. Biden denying it really recently with that interview with Muir from ABC, but then Karine Jean-Pierre coming right out and saying no, he's not going to pardon his son. That was the day after the election she made that announcement. So to Andrew Cuomo's point, that it's hypocritical, he said he wasn't going to do it, and he did. Now look, and this is what Cuomo said. This is another quote from Cuomo. Now look, everyone understands family first, and that you'll do anything for your children. Well, actually, it's kind of ironic when you talk about family first. Chris Cuomo lost his job at CNN because he went family first over reporting and defending his brother, et cetera, et cetera. So that is kind of interesting. He said that. But now look, everyone understands family first, and that you'll do anything for your children, and you would literally put your life on the line for your kid, for your child. Everyone understands that. But what they don't understand is changing your mind, saying one thing and doing something else, and also the justification for it. Look, the justice system is political. It's your justice system, President Biden. What a damning commentary to say. The federal justice system was political, and that's why they prosecuted my son. To say your justice system was playing politics after we just went through a campaign where we saw Donald Trump saying the same exact thing. It's clear now. He wrapped up by saying, it's clear now, especially as it was reinforced with the president's statements, this was politics. It was politics. You've got prosecutors in New York who campaigned saying, I'm going to get Trump if you elect me. and then they get elected, and then they target President Trump. It was politics. I believe that. I've said it before, and the American people believe it. And I think that was one of the main drivers in this election, that the migrants, inflation, and a distrust of the system. And we've talked about this numerous times on the program, but it is, I think it was a major factor. Of course, the economy, immigration, of course, all factors. But I think there's a lot of people that perhaps would not have voted for Trump because they don't like his tweets or something to that extent, changing their opinion after they saw the nonstop lawfare used against him for 4 years. And the attacks such as trying to keep him off the ballot in certain states just to make it so you, the voter, the American people, couldn't vote for who you may have wanted to or may not even wanted to. But that turns a lot of people, and I think that played a major role for the high, almost unprecedented numbers that he received, the landslide victory. Also, Cuomo said he called the situation frightening and pure politics, while suggesting it was one of several reasons people were fed up with Democrats during the election. He said, if the Democrat Party doesn't look in the mirror, shame on them. People have become fed up. The Democrat Party has become too attuned to elitists, extremists, the far, far, far left, who are disconnected from the day-to-day agenda of working men and women. The larger point is we have to understand that the justice system has gotten out of control. It's a political weapon, and it has to stop. That's, I think, a fair question to ask this morning, and I would ask you, do you believe the Democrat Party has looked in the mirror, to Andrew Cuomo's point? I'm starting to not think so. At first, there was perhaps a little soul-searching, but there wasn't the great change I expected. Now, it's only been a month, keep in mind, but some of the talking points already being used are reminiscent of what Harris said or what whoever said. So I don't think the soul-searching has really begun, or the look in the mirror, as former Governor Cuomo said. And then Cuomo also said it's him, Trump, and Adams. They're all the same. All victims of a system confirmed by the president to be rotten with political bias. And that's true. The president of the United States said the justice system is politically biased. That's where a lot of the criticism comes from the left of why Biden would have said it in that way, when he could have just said, I'm pardoning my son. I changed my mind. It's my son, as Stephen A. Smith said. Come on. But instead, he went and, as Caitlin Collins said, sounding very much like Donald Trump during the campaign, that the justice system has been politicized. I don't agree with Cuomo on this, that his case was political. I mean, he was propped up, essentially, by Democrats throughout COVID and even before. I mean, protected in so many ways. He was untouchable. But when the COVID nursing home deaths came in, and then the kind of the cockiness of releasing that book, and then, of course, the harassment claims came out, et cetera, it was just a bridge too far for many Democrats. And it only took one or two, Kim specifically, but it took one or two to turn on him, which is never normally done. You didn't turn on Cuomo because, to use the word that we used earlier, very vindictive when he was governor, and that was acknowledged by both parties, Republicans and Democrats. So you didn't turn on Cuomo. So when a few had the quote-unquote guts to do it, that really changed everything. And people, and I've heard many people say this. I know we had the conversation with former Congressman Joe Semplinsky about this. You have political capital, and if you're a nice politician, but you're effective and you get the job done, and sometimes you make tough decisions and not everybody agrees with you, but you have that kind of that friendliness where people will defend you and they'll stand behind you. But when you have Cuomo, who would turn on anybody, who would punish essentially people, even in his own party, for going against him, and as they would say, stepping on people on the way up, it's a lot easier for those to see as the flood breaks, when the levee breaks, when you've got one opponent, or not opponent, one person from your political side turning on you. It was easy for the floodgates to open and have others jump. So I don't agree with Cuomo being lumped in that same category, especially considering he's gotten away, other than public opinion, gotten away with the decision behind the nursing home edict. And as weekly, I don't want to. Adams said the same thing. Adams lumped himself in. I don't think he lumped himself in with Cuomo, but saying that it was very similar to what Trump had been saying. The Biden Justice, this is what Mayor Adams said, the Biden Justice Department has been politicized. Does that sound familiar? He said while laughing, reading the sentence. Rest my case. So that is another unintended, well, yeah, I guess you could say that, unintended consequence of the way Biden decided to word the pardon. And that's the way it actually works to, as many people said on both sides, that this works to Trump's favor at the end of the day. And it's surprising that it was worded that way from Biden's handlers, that there wasn't a way for them to save face by doing the turnaround and lying so many times about the not pardoning his son. There was a better way to save face, but this is the direction they went down. All right, we got to take a short break. Stay with us. We have Steuben County Sheriff Jim Allard coming up very soon. You won't want to miss that after the big court case coming down the line. We'll be talking with him about that extensively, so stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. Thank you to Boss Security and Horseheads for bringing us the roof cam. Contact Boss Security for all your business and home security needs. We are back with Frankly Speaking, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. I'm your host, Frank Aiken. We're talking about the Hunter Biden pardon. Ken writes in, we all knew that Biden would pardon Hunter, right? Why is no one talking about the cost of the trials that could have been saved if Biden was honest in his intentions? One source says the trials cost over $500 million. Yeah, that is a very good point, Ken. That is something that has been kind of overlooked. I think because it's the initial shock value of it. Again, we're not surprised, but I think in the way that he worded it and the way it can be used by what you could call his opponents. I think that's why that is the focus, but I'm sure there will be some talks of the cost, the overall cost, the time and money. And to your point, Michael Goodwin in the Post says that Joe Biden's pardon was predictable. And what he says is it didn't threaten his reputation, because we talked about that extensively yesterday on the program, that was the talking point from the media, that this really hurts his legacy. They are trying to make him the fall guy, meaning Biden, on many issues in the Democrat Party, instead of going back to Cuomo's point, looking in the mirror and seeing why they lost. But what Michael Goodwin says, it's not about threatening his reputation or his legacy, is the term they keep using. It cemented, actually, an already corrupt legacy. So it is with the Democrats and media stenographers who are mad at Biden. Did they really believe his pledges not to pardon his son under any circumstances? Once he was convicted, a pardon was inevitable. How did they not see that coming? What will they do when he pardons his brother Jim Biden? Claims that the I keep combining pardon and Biden. Claims that the Hunter pardon threatens Biden's legacy, suggests the suckers actually believed the Hitler hysteria that Trump was a threat to all that is pure and good, and that Biden was an honorable and honest man. The pardon doesn't threaten Biden's legacy, it cements it. He's been corrupt for decades. As the family's influence peddling scheme proved, those who refused to consider the possibility that Joe personally profited from the estimated $20 million foreign sources paid him and his son and brother didn't lack for evidence. They simply refused to see the evidence. They're the same people who never acknowledged the impact that inflation, the open borders, and the rush to impose a radical cultural change were having on so many voters, including significant numbers of blacks and Latino Democrats. They apparently believed that Bidenomics was working and that more illegal immigrants were a good thing. Anybody that didn't agree was wrong or a MAGA crazy. I say apparently because they had to know that Biden was a historically unpopular president, but they kept finding ways to protect him and blame voters. To say they were motivated by their hatred for Trump is to state the obvious. Yeah, it's almost blinded. I don't even know if I would say motivated, but blinded by their hatred of Trump. So it's an interesting point, and this is a piece that you can find for yourself at the New York Post by Michael Goodwin. Joe Biden's predictable pardon of Hunter didn't threaten his reputation. It cemented an already corrupt legacy. Here we go. We got to take a short break because we have, there we have it. Sheriff Jim Allard is in the studio. Hey, do they call this a victory lap? Okay, I got to take a short break. I said it, not you. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking. Stay with us. The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam brought to you by Boss Security and Horsets. Contact Boss Security for all your business and home security needs. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. And in that studio, we have Steuben County Sheriff Jim Allard. I got to find my button. Jim, it's been so long since I've had you on the program. There you go.
Hey, I'm here. There you go.
You know what? Communications 101. I shouldn't ask the question everybody wants me to ask. I should drag it out, keep them hooked.
Right, until the last 5 minutes.
Yeah, right. Yeah. How was your Thanksgiving?
My Thanksgiving was excellent. For the first time in, I think, 6 years, all my kids were home.
Oh, isn't that great?
So it was very nice. Yes.
Celebrating.
Yes.
All right.
Well, you know, it's kind of funny because as corny as it may sound, when we do Thanksgiving, we do what we're each thankful for.
Of course.
And I said, I'm thankful that my family is all here. Mm-hmm. My mother-in-law says, I thought you'd be thankful for the decision. And I said, you know, I'm happy that justice has been served, mm-hmm. but how sad is it that we had to go through all this?
Yes.
That this ill-advised and poor leadership combined in this legislative action that's cost Steuben County taxpayers so many dollars. Yeah. It's cost me a year of my life to fight, mm-hmm. not to mention using some of my retirement savings to get there. So yes, I don't want to appear ungrateful. I'm very happy with the decision and very grateful that the truth has been seen. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, why did we even have to go through this?
We shouldn't be here.
Yes, this should never have been an issue. This should never have occurred. So when you look, I mean, the original legislation was never done in the state of New York by any other county. Yet in Steuben, we thought it was a great idea. And when you look at all of the maneuverings they did and all of the money that was spent on it, you've got to ask yourself, where is our council and leadership at the legislative level mm-hmm. that would even think that this is something that should be done?
No, I know we've talked about it a million times, but there's a lot of things going on in Steuben County we can be focused on.
Yes.
And then to spend, and I know when I first announced it on the program, $200,000, people were shocked. That's mm-hmm. $200,000 taxpayers' dollars.
Yes.
Thrown out the window, essentially.
Used to affect a political end, mm-hmm. used to mm-hmm. spend on public policy to affect a political end that, again, is contrary to what the voters of the county of Steuben wanted done.
I know. And I know we've talked about it on the program before, but people will comment on this show from Chemung County and say, wait a minute, the sheriff's elected. Yeah. Why is this all happening the way it's happening? And mm-hmm. I think the whole time we've talked about it, it's always been a shrug of the shoulders, not understanding why this is happening.
As I've spoken with folks that were in the room,
mm-hmm.
obviously everything was done in executive session, which was a large part of the decision. Mm-hmm. It was done to try and get me to not run again and to leave office. Mm-hmm. And to make it so, if you remember the original legislation, if I didn't get my millions of dollars of liability insurance, I wasn't going to be able to do my duties or get paid.
Right.
So they were going to cost me on both ends. Mm-hmm. Luckily, they realized that one was so completely not based in law mm-hmm. that they repealed it. But again, you got to ask yourself, who's driving this bus?
Yeah.
And why are they taking it off a cliff?
Yeah. I mean, this is, and the judge, it was scathing what he put. I mean, that wasn't a weak statement that he made. I mean,
no.
It was pretty crystal clear. There was bad decisions made from the beginning.
And I've looked at that decision and I thought, okay, if I was handed a scathing mm-hmm. rebuke of the way I do business mm-hmm. by competent authority, such as a New York State Supreme Court justice,
right,
I would be gathering my division heads together going, hey, we're doing stuff wrong.
How did this happen?
What training do we need to fix this? What do we need to do differently in the future? Mm-hmm. How can we fix this? Because we're not serving the public. We're not serving our constituents by acting in a manner that doesn't even meet a lawful review. Mm-hmm. So what do we need to do? Well, I'll tell you one thing they need to do, and the district attorney and I have both recommended this, is they need to get the Committee on Open Government in to give them a class.
Yes.
On what executive session can be used for, mm-hmm. what it can't be used for, and how to operate in a transparent fashion. And that's one of the basic issues here is we should be mm-hmm. a transparent government. Mm-hmm. The only time we go into executive session is for very narrowly defined reasons.
Very narrow.
And it should be the last resort rather than the first resort. I was reading the minutes from the last administrative meeting that the county had, administrative committee meeting, and they voted on 6 raises in executive session. What are we doing?
Yeah.
That's not items for executive session, so they continue to misuse executive session, it would appear.
Well, and that was one of the very frustrating parts at the very beginning, where we'd all be blindsided by the news because there wasn't the conversation,
Right.
there wasn't the talk, no one even knew this was
No
going on. It
transparency.
came out of left field,
Right.
and that's the problem with executive sessions. We got to take our first break. I think we got people hooked. What do you think?
I think so.
All right, we'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox, stay with us. Thank you again to Boss Security in Horseheads for bringing us the roof cam. Contact them today for all your home and business security needs. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio. And in that studio, we have Sheriff Jim Allard. We're talking this morning. I got to move your camera a little bit. Got to make sure we got your name on. I bumped some buttons here. There we go.
Got too excited.
As if they don't know your name.
We got too worked up.
I know.
I forgot to say it's a beautiful day in Steuben County.
Yeah, well, it is a beautiful day in Steuben County. See, we got other issues on our mind.
Yep.
But going back to obviously the New York State Supreme Court decision, all of this to me, through all of our conversations, seems like what we would call it when I worked for the congressman, an unforced error. Mm-hmm. Is there any other way to describe it? None of this was necessary.
Right. I call it a self-inflicted wound.
Yeah.
That's, I mean,
even better.
it's none of it was necessary. None of it was needed. Obviously, it was, and to use the justice's language, it was a bad faith decision to do based on threats and coercion
Right.
within. How do you look in the mirror?
Yeah. And I don't know how you respond to your constituents on this.
Right.
Because there's people that obviously in the legislature that we're voting on. They went this move. I mean, I don't know what kind of response they're getting. I'd love to hear. They're welcome to come on if they want
Right.
to contact me. Because I know throughout this whole time we've been talking about it, people talk to me about it all the time. So I can
Right.
only imagine what it's like for you.
Yeah, my phone's been busy.
Yeah, especially now. But how much time has been dedicated to this? When did this all start?
Oh my gosh. So this initiated in June of 2023.
Okay.
That's when the first complaint occurred that they grabbed onto and used as their banner to force this legislation through. In July was when they took their first legislative action in executive session. And it's gone. Then it went through 2 committees and then went to the full ledge and it got tabled because there was some absences, I believe. And then it got tabled a second time and then it got voted on in September.
This is a long time. And so we talk about the time, and then we talk about the money. And I've heard from a lot of viewers saying, okay, this costs taxpayers at least $200,000 to go after you. Are there any repercussions?
Only those that the taxpayers bring forward in the next election,
Right.
obviously.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, what a waste of money.
Well, and that's, when you look at the cost,
Yeah.
and it's not just money either. Throughout this, members of my office have been targeted by the county.
Right.
And both financially and they've been harassed. The county, with the one law firm that they had to do their reports back to them, I've had at least a dozen staff members say that they were harassed by the attorney that was conducting those reports. They've been threatened.
Right.
I've had staff members called up and told that they needed to get on the right side of this and give a statement against me
Right.
or else. I mean,
That seems above board. My goodness.
Yeah, and that's been by senior leadership at the county level. So when you look at all of the ancillary issues also, not just the money that was spent, but the harassment, the threatening, the bullying, all the things that they were supposedly after me for doing,
Right.
they've done tenfold
Of course.
worse.
Yeah. You think about the
through this.
morale, even. You had morale.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I know in the early days this had to be very discouraging until it became a battle cry almost.
Well, and it was very discouraging. Again, I've spent my entire life in public service.
Right.
Went in the Army at 18 right out of high school.
Right.
I have served my country, I've served my county, I've served my city across the board. And I've done so in a manner, you talk to anybody that's ever served with me, they'll tell you my motto's always been, let's do it right the first time.
Right.
And let's do it the right way, best practice. And to have a group or a few people try to destroy my reputation, try to destroy the way people look at me,
Right.
and basically say that I'm a person who harasses and lies and steals and
Right.
try to make that case to the public, that's very, very disturbing. I mean, I don't hide it. I went to a counselor in Binghamton in the middle of this because my son said to me, "You're disengaging."
Yeah, sure.
You know, I mean, it's depressing.
Yeah, I can
And
only imagine.
He's like, "Dad, you're usually the life of the party."
Yeah, right.
And now all of a sudden I look and you're out on the front porch and you're not even interacting with the grandkids. What's going on? You need to see somebody. You need
Right.
some help.
Yeah.
So I did. I went to a counselor down in Binghamton that wasn't from around here and didn't know anything about what's going on.
Yeah.
And it was very, very helpful.
Yeah,
And I'm glad I did.
Yeah. I mean, it's necessary because this is not easy for anybody, and especially someone that's been as popular as you have as sheriff. And obviously, I mean, this time, congratulations, by the way,
thank you.
on your tough fought reelection campaign.
Thank you.
But when you think about how popular, you didn't have anybody oppose you. It was shocking to see these it was almost like a rumor by media, right? Press release comes out and these type of things.
Yes.
And there was no substance in it. That was
No.
what was frustrating.
Yes.
So what do people do when there's no substance? You make up the stories, right?
Right,
And which
yeah.
is probably a part of the goal in all of this.
I think it was. I think the fact that we responded so quickly and so accurately. And again, that's why I attached the judge's ruling, the court ruling, to my press release.
Right.
And I've done that
Yeah.
consistently. Don't take my word for what was said in court.
Right.
Take the ruling and read it for yourself
Yeah.
and determine for yourself what you think it means.
You know, there is some kind of irony about when it was released, the decision. There we go. That's tough. When it
The
was
decision.
the decision. When it was released, it was right around the same time that they dropped the charges on Trump, and you could see the correlation of
I didn't even make that.
Yeah,
I didn't even make
because
that.
I'm talking about both of them on the show.
Yeah.
I think it was right around the same
Yeah,
time.
yeah.
It was really interesting to see, the term's probably overused now, but the lawfare and how certain entities can be using the justice system in a bad way. So it's kind of there's an irony there. But we keep talking about the $200,000 to taxpayers.
Yeah.
But you had to have not just time in it, but cost as well.
I did. So when this started, when I was first notified they were going to try and take away my indemnification, I asked the county for a conflict attorney.
Right.
Let's get an outside legal opinion to look at what we're doing here and see if it's in fact A, a good idea, being done lawfully,
Yeah.
and C, is it recommended? And I was told, no, the only attorney you need is the county attorney.
Okay.
And I said, well, the county attorney is the one who's threatening me.
Yeah, this doesn't add up.
So, I'm not the sharpest knife in the drawer, but that doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me.
Yeah.
So again, I contacted one of my colleagues who has an attorney assigned to them, and said, "Who would you use if you were in this situation?"
Right.
And he said, "I'll give you 3 names, but this is the person I'd hire, and that's the person I hired." So I have had to cash in my retirement savings, basically.
It's unbelievable.
Luckily, I invested well as a young patrolman with the city, and I had money set aside for retirement. I've had to cash in almost $50,000 of my retirement savings in order to pay for my attorney, just to be able to keep doing my job.
That is unbelievable. But if you think of cost on return, you paid 50, we paid 200,000.
Yeah,
The taxpayers lost.
You were engaged in a lot of other things too.
That's
Yeah.
right. But that's shocking. What has the reaction been by the people? Because you've been supported right along.
Yes.
Like I said, on this program,
Huge
it's
support.
been nonstop. And we joked during petition season,
Yeah.
it took a lot longer for you because everybody
Yeah.
wanted to talk about it. What's the reaction been?
It's been overwhelming.
Yeah.
It really has. It's been so positive. I've had emails and posts and messages and
I'm sure.
and text messages, you name it. People just saying, thank God justice prevailed.
Right.
And it's really nice to hear. I get a lot of congratulations, and as you did.
Yeah.
And again, I say thank you, and I appreciate that.
Yeah.
But it still kind of burns me that we had to be there in the first place.
Yeah.
And I super appreciate all of the support, and I wouldn't be able to do this job without the support.
Of course, yeah.
And that's a lot of why I keep doing this job is it's an important job, and B, people appreciate the fact that we do so in a professional manner and support us in that. So for me, I can keep doing that.
Right.
But the public support has been tremendous, and I'm very, and I said this earlier, I'm very humbled by the fact that, and I put it in the news, or in the newsletter. Yeah. It's so humbling when you think about 35,000 people come out and check your box.
Isn't that amazing? Yeah.
It really is, and I never lose sight of that. To me, that's a contract to keep being honest, to keep doing things the right way the first time, and keep with that professional standard that we've set.
Now, this has been hanging over your head for over a year. We didn't know. Every time I asked you what the time frame was. So when that was released, what did that feel like?
It was a big relief.
It was something
Absolutely.
off your back, of course.
Well, yeah, I've been waiting for so long to hear, and you never know.
No.
It's like buying a house. It's not done until you sign, right?
Yeah.
And so you don't know what's coming. You never do. I have no idea. I had a feeling, having been in it, I knew what I reasonably expected. But so, yeah, it was definitely a relief to have it done. But now, what's the next shoe to drop with the county?
Yeah. That's the question.
Yeah.
That's what, because the old saying, which is kind of cliche now, but when you're in a hole, stop digging.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like they haven't taken that from day one, so it makes me a little nervous. Has there been any reaction from the county? I haven't personally seen it. Okay.
No.
Yeah.
No public reaction. I had one legislator call me and congratulate me.
Okay, great.
And apologize for the way the legislature acted.
One.
Which I thought,
Well, yeah, which is good for
which
that person.
I thought that was very big of that person. And obviously I stay in touch with the chair on other business matters. So.
Well, and that was a question that we had from a viewer earlier. I'm wondering if the sheriff's working relationship can continue smoothly after the dust settles on this.
On my end, yeah.
Yeah. That's never been a question, though.
No, that's never been a question on my end. I'm not the one that shot themselves in the foot. I've said since day one, I'm here to partner with you.
Yeah.
Let's do good things together. And I think it's always been more about control than working with me.
Yeah.
And
unfortunately, that makes no sense either.
No.
I mean, you talk about shared services used to be the big
Correct.
link. Isn't this something that, why wouldn't you all want to work together for the betterment of Steuben County instead of the detriment of $200,000?
Right. Well, by New York State law, by PERB law, the Public Employee Relations Board, we're co-employers.
Yeah.
We have to work together.
Yeah.
If we don't work together, you see the result. It costs taxpayer money.
And when we come back, we'll talk other issues, but obviously this is the main question of the day. Is there, where do we go from here? Is that we're just going along? I mean, I don't know. Because it seems like we've been waiting for this so long.
I know.
And we
What's
get the response.
next?
What's next, right?
A lot of that depends on the reaction of the legislature, which there's been none.
Yeah.
So
that's so interesting.
Or even recognition.
Yeah, I guess that's what you expected. The kind of boilerplate response.
Right. Well, again, what I'm looking for is, are they going to fix it?
Right.
Are they going to take the necessary steps to make sure they're not in this position again?
Yeah. I don't know. I'm nervous. All right, well, let's take a short break. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. And we are back. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. We're broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio, and in that studio we have Sheriff Jim Allard. We don't have to just talk about this, but I will. This is all you've been talking about.
Well, I expect to see you Saturday morning out at the Irwin Walmart.
I'm glad you mentioned that.
For Toys for Tots.
Fill the patrol car. We should have started the show with that. Toys for Tots.
Coats for kids, too.
Yes, that's great. Actually, I'm glad that you mentioned that because it's this Saturday.
Yes.
It's at Irwin Walmart from
10
to noon.
Yep.
What should people know?
They should know to bring unwrapped toys.
Okay.
New toys or coats or mittens or hats or gloves for school-age children. And we're going to fill the patrol car with the toys.
Okay.
And then we do it's part of our annual coat drive. but it's not just coats. It's whatever clothing you may have for kids at school that are without.
Right.
And especially now that winter's here.
Yeah, clearly. And this has been successful. How long have you been doing this?
Yeah, this is our 5th year.
Wow.
Yeah.
It just grows every year.
It does, and I got to tell you, it's amazing to me because a lot of times you'll see people who are obviously not well off. Mm-hmm. They give the most.
Yeah, isn't that amazing?
It is. It truly is.
Yeah.
And again, I talk a lot about what a special place we live, but holy moly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've noticed that when ringing the bell for the Salvation Army, right? You go out there, and it is a person that you would think maybe struggling to get through that.
Correct.
Makes sure they put that money in.
Yeah.
And others that maybe not struggling so much.
Yeah.
But again, that's a little different because they have to have change and all that. But that's this Saturday at their own Walmart from 10 a.m. Till noon. Now, I did want to ask because we mentioned your reelection, which was hard fought, like I said. But congratulations.
Thank you.
But when you look at the overall, just at the national level, but at the local level, state level, something we've talked about so extensively, public safety.
Yes.
Are they going to learn in Albany that people are tired of the bail reform with the kids that have become a major story that are growing in gangs? Do you think they've learned?
I think they're learning.
Yeah.
I think that there's going to have to be some major changes in the next 2 years before the next governor's race.
Right.
If the current governor wishes to remain. You saw a big movement down in New York City.
Yeah.
On the votes for the presidential election.
Amazing, wasn't it?
Big movement.
Yeah.
And I think that the newness, you know, we're leading the charge. I think that's starting to wear off, and people are going, I don't feel safe.
I don't feel safe at all. I mean, I read the New York Post. I'd be terrified because the Post does highlight it and does an amazing job. I mean, especially the young people that are getting involved, and you see it's heartbreaking.
Well, and that's, you know, you've heard me say this several times, but get involved in your local government. Don't just leave it to the people that have an agenda and an axe to grind. Get involved and make good decisions for your community. It makes your community better and stronger. Don't just let people that want to use it as a jumping point to something else. Don't let them have that decision-making ability over you and your family. We've got to change the way New York does business, or we're going to continue to lose people.
Oh, exactly.
I mean, in Steuben County, we have almost 10% less than we did 15 years ago.
Wow. And you can't. We just had a report this morning about the cost of schools rising, and you have tax that people when they get the tax
enrollment goes down.
As enrollment goes down.
Yeah.
And it just adds to this overall picture. And I think when Trump and Republicans made such headway here in New York, you know, they try to point the Houses. Listen, they're scared.
Yeah.
Because you had, and it's too bad Lee Zeldin in a way was chosen by Trump, because I think he was probably going to be the next guy. But they've got to open up their eyes and say, wow, how does Donald Trump do this good in what they've always called deep blue New York?
Right.
It's public safety. It's migration.
Yeah. I saw an interview this morning on the news with Sheriff Milby up in Wayne County, and he did a really good job. But we had to sign, as law enforcement executives, we had to sign in order to still get DMV information from the state. Yeah. We had to sign that we would not share that with ICE or Border Patrol.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the mindset that New York State is in. We're gonna show them. Well, no. Yeah. You're just making everybody less safe. Yeah. Stop it.
The only reason it piqued my interest because I saw Mayor Adams, who's got some troubles going on, but Mayor Adams,
he's busy.
I know he's busy, but he was even saying, "I'll report anybody to ICE." And Hochul said it: if they break the law, I'll be the first one. It seems a little disingenuous now,
right?
But to me, that tells me politically they're thinking we better be careful here. Lee Zeldin came within sniffing distance.
Your southern governors were smart. Yeah. You want to be a sanctuary city, and you think you can say that without it costing you anything. Okie doke. Yeah. Here you go.
Yeah. That's a huge factor for Trump. All right, we got to take our last break before we wrap up today's edition of Frankly Speaking, so stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking on WYDC TV, Big Fox. And we are back. Thank you again to Boss Security and Horseheads. Contact Boss Security for all your business and home security needs. We are broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Market Street in Corning, and in that studio, Sheriff Jim Allard. Hey, we got a nice comment here from a viewer. You've had a very loyal fan base here on the show.
Very lucky with that.
This is Good Morning Frank and good morning to the Sheriff Allard. A huge win, huge in all caps, for justice. Congratulations. The overreach, expense, coercion, and overall blatant lack of integrity by the players is sickening, and some should be held accountable. I certainly think a defamation case is in order and a financial reimbursement a must. Well, that is very nice.
It was. And again, I can't tell you how humbling it is to have the amount of support that I've seen.
Yeah.
It just amazes me.
And I know I don't want to relitigate this and go back to it, but it does feel like a win. Mm-hmm. But when you think about it, it's not.
Yeah.
It is for you personally, and we're glad, of course, like you said, justice is served.
But it's not a win for the county.
No, it's not for the county, and we should have just never been here.
No, correct.
But let's change the topic.
Yeah.
So sticker stores. I know I bring this up every time.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts? I know that last I knew, and that something changed here in Steuben County, it's still being done by weights and measures.
Yes.
So you're still not involved?
So I'm not in the listing of the law. We've met with weights and measures.
Okay.
We're here to help them any way we can.
Of course.
Because at the end of the day, it's still criminal enterprises affecting public safety. Mm-hmm. So we do have ongoing talks with them. We're hoping that the county readies itself and prepares to move forward. Mm-hmm. Because the other side of that is the way these laws are written, there's a lot of action that has to occur by the county attorney and in the courts.
Okay.
And the courts have had no briefing on what these hearings are or what they're going to look like or what they can do and can't do. So there's a lot of backroom discussions trying to figure out the mechanics of that and the logistics of that. Mm-hmm. And again, we stand ready to help anytime because it is such a issue, public safety issue. And, the areas that have the legal stores that have the licensed cannabis distilleries, or I think that's the correct term, or close to it anyway. They don't stink.
Yeah.
Everything's sealed.
Right.
You don't have that, and it's almost like an OSHA issue
That's
at
what
this
I don't
point.
understand.
Is that the smell is so great next door, as you well know, next door to any of these places, and on the street corner, and from people going in and out, that it's noticeable, and it's got to be similar to secondhand smoke from cigarette smoking.
Of course. The worst part was trick or treat when the kids were all down here.
Yeah.
And you could smell down the street. I mean, listen, I have a long day of work at the show. Would I like to light up a cigar right here? Mm-hmm. If I did, what would happen? What would be the first thing? I'd get in a lot of trouble.
You would be.
Yeah. So how are the rules not applied in the same manner?
Well, I guess it depends on how deep you want to go into my conspiracy theories on that.
Well, fair enough.
But I do believe that the law was changed in the way it was changed to create a customer base for the lawful ones.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, they're coming. But in the meantime, we've got all of these areas suffering blight.
Yeah.
And suffering from the smell, et cetera. Plus, at their base, they're a criminal enterprise.
Right. And think of something as simple as in the summer Centerway. We're here in tourists. It's always been. They get their lunch. They eat out there on a beautiful day. You've noticed a stark contrast this year with the smell because I can't walk down the street without smelling at some point.
Right.
That's amazing to me.
Yeah.
So other counties have been able to do it. What is the hitch here in Steuben? Maybe I'm not understanding.
So again, the Steuben County leadership.
Oh, okay.
Or management. I'm not going to call it leadership.
Right.
Steuben County management determined that they needed to have it with weights and measures.
So that's okay. Now I understand.
Any other county has put it with the sheriff's office,
right?
Because it is a criminal enterprise that you're trying to affect.
Yeah.
We do things differently here in Steuben County.
Yeah, we sure do, as we've learned throughout this whole program.
Yeah.
And it's almost, people think you're joking when you say it's through weights and measures. And that's not any knock at weights and measures.
No.
But you just don't think of them as any kind of law enforcement.
And they're not. Where weights and measures comes in is when the legal dispensaries, that's it.
Yeah.
The legal dispensaries come in. I was almost there. Yeah. The legal it's probably sitting next to one too long here. Legal dispensaries come in. Weights and measures comes in to make sure that 3 ounces is 3 ounces.
Sure.
And that the packaging is done correctly and that all of those things. That's what Weights and Measures does.
Exactly.
And
They can't. They
it's
don't want to be
just
saddled.
grossly unfair
Yeah.
to saddle them with this.
They don't want that.
No.
Imagine you sign up for Weights and Measures. You've got your normal job, and they all of a sudden, hey, you're going to be Johnny Law all of a sudden.
Yeah.
With no, it's so amazing to me.
Yeah.
Just before we go, I got a comment from a viewer here. Sheriff Allard is the real deal. Thank you for your service. That's nice. Is that your nickname,
nice.
like Evander Holyfield? Before we go,
Don't bite my ear.
Yeah, no kidding.
Don't bite my ear.
Before we go, I know you have a pretty exciting thing coming up with the FBI leadership training. Could you tell us about that?
Yeah, it's going on right now. It just started yesterday. We've been fortunate enough to be able to get the FBI law enforcement executive development training here in Steuben County. This is our second time hosting it.
Okay.
And we have it going right now where we have law enforcement professionals, management level from across the state here for FBI training, leadership training. Was from as far away as Albany County.
Oh, wow.
Quite a few. I think I saw 3 different undersheriffs in it. We have a captain and lieutenant from the jail and a lieutenant and a sergeant from the road patrol that are attending it. I really like it. I went through it a lot of years ago, and it's very, very good. It's leadership development training that rivals what you get in the military.
Oh, wow.
And I'm very impressed with it, and it's tailored to today.
Okay.
And it's the same as what they teach in the National Academy, but they come out and do it locally for you.
How long does it take?
It's 3 one-week sessions.
Oh, okay. Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
And focuses purely on leadership and how to be a good leader within your agency and your community. So I'm very excited about that. And yeah, we're halfway through week 2.
Yeah. Well, we are out of time. Thanks for giving us so much time. And again, I know everybody's saying congratulations. Unfortunately, I wish we didn't have to say congratulations or anything.
Right.
I wish it could never happen. But I hope this is in some ways the last time we talk about it. In other ways, not. But we'll see. We'll see. But thanks, and happy holidays if I don't talk to you.
Yes,
I'm
you
sure
have
we
a
will.
very Merry Christmas, my friend.
All right. Well, join us tomorrow morning, 6 a.m. Joe Sempolinski's going to be our guest.
Is he?
Yeah, so join us tomorrow
Very good.
right here on Frankly Speaking. Have a great day, everyone.